Hola and welcome to a new episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show. It's been a while. But we're back. So we were really busy painting spring, but we are finally presenting a new series of paintings, a new collection, and we're excited to present the new collection to you guys. Wow, I don't even know how to talk. My name is Julio Panisello. I am the dream alchemist at Roofless Painters, a free-range art school, atelier, and gallery for present-day romantics. And with every episode of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show, what we do is we reveal the theme of our next painting collection, so you can find out what we will be painting next, and also the reason why. So we propose themes for each of our collections, and this year we're slowing down a little bit just because we find that having extra time to paint makes the work much more elevated, and also gives us time. It gives us time to catch up. So this will be our 8th painting collection of 2022. So we're essentially in the middle of the year, or close to the middle of the year, and we have done we're gonna start our 8th collection. So we explain where the painting theme comes from, and also how the painting theme of the next painting collection relates to our contemporary time. We try to kind of establish a bridge between what we do today and the conceptual reason why we chose this painting subject, the next painting subject. So we also explore different possibilities for visual representation of the concept, and we use images of paintings throughout art history as inspiration. And those images, they kind of help us cite stylistic and historical references, so we can just give or provide an idea of examples of paintings that have tackled the same subject matter, and also get inspired by those examples to kind of get inspiration. So in many ways, and you can see that this is happening right now, in many ways our episodes are like our paintings. They may be planned, but they are messy, unpredictable, and certainly unvarnished. So please stick with us throughout this less than 30 minutes presentation, because even if we have technical difficulties, sometimes we do, so if the connection drops, we just ask you to bear with us if you will, so we can just reconnect and then continue the presentation. Wow. So in many ways, I'm so sorry. All episodes can be found, I'm reading from a script essentially, but kind of changing it up. So all episodes can be found as video on Instagram and also on our YouTube channel. We have a YouTube channel. We have tons of videos that are free, and in addition to all our webinars and tutorials that are not free, but if you're interested, you can just register and listen to any of them. They're amazing. But yeah, these presentations are free. We have a ton of them, so you can find them there, and also you can find obviously all the presentations here on Instagram as well. But if you are a fan of podcasts and you type the Roofless Dog and Pony Show in any of the podcast platforms that you may use, you will see a bunch of the episodes of the Roofless Dog and Pony Show, exactly what we're doing right now, on an audio form, including all of them, including Amazon Music. So we're also there. You are welcome to contact us with any questions or comments about this episode, whether it's a live comment or if you just want to add some notes later in the recording. But we are open to corrections or additions. We humbly stand to be corrected. So we do our best to kind of give a historical perspective, or try to connect conceptually to what we do, but sometimes other people may have better ideas on how to integrate all the components together. This is also an open call, so if you like this idea but you're not interested in joining any of the webinars or in-person sessions that we're going to host working on this idea, you can also do your own exercise study version and then share it with us, because we'd like to incorporate it to our gallery at the end. I think I have the images, so I'm just going to go ahead and share a few images. So we have been involved in painting outside and being in touch with nature, and it has been a great escapade from the gruesome reality that sort of like haunt us. And we are very privileged in the sense that we are able to carry on with our lives with certain normalcy, and we understand and acknowledge that that's not the case for so many people. And let me just kind of like mention, or let us mention, that we are speaking or presenting from a place of privilege, but there's a really dark reality all around us, not only because of conflicts, but scarcity, sense of loss, upcoming changes in the rights that we thought we would enjoy and that are going to be completely taken away and dismantled. So there's a lot of anxiety, financial anxiety. Things are upside down, and again, we're not yet out of the pandemic era or period. So everything seems to be piling up on our plate in different levels and with different experiences. So because the mood is so dark and so depressing, and it's so everything feels so haunting, it kind of like reminded us of several times in history where there were similar aspects that happen, like extreme wealth and extreme scarcity and poverty, and a lot of conflicts and wars going on that generated or started or launched a movement that we want to talk about. Specifically, let me just go back to the 17th century in Europe, specifically in the Netherlands. Because it was kind of like a really tricky historical moment in the history of humans, in which extreme wealth and also a lot of wars and conflicts created or inspired a lot of artists to start or create this kind of like dark genre of still life painting that flourished all over Europe, and that was the VANITAS or VANITAS. VANITAS. It's a Latin word, and it's a word that's used to describe a specific still life that symbolizes a lot of the anxieties and worries that artists had at the time, and culture makers. It wasn't only painting, and they wanted to find a way to convey and express this somber mood, this anxiety through their respective creative mediums. And in painting, people kind of like started painting groups of objects that had a certain meaning, a specific meaning. So I'm reading from the Wikipedia just to get a definition, but vanitas or vanitas is a symbolic work of art showing the transience of life, the futility of pleasure, and the certainty of death, often contrasting symbols of wealth and symbols of ephemerality and death. Best known are Vanitas still lifes, a common genre in Low Countries in the 16th and 17th centuries in kind of the Netherlands area. They have also been created at other times and in other media and genres. So first of all, there's a distinction between Vanitas and Memento Mori. Memento Mori precedes Vanitas. It started like much earlier. And it kind of like has similarities because those artists wanted to essentially paint things that reminded, memento means sort of like memory, reminding people of their imminent death. So usually memento moris were painted in the back of portraits, just to make sure that the sitters of the portraits were not super happy about or super fired up about being immortalized on a painting. The artist kind of like I don't know exactly. We don't know exactly what kind of like intention, if it was contractual or if they just did it on their own. But there are some formal paintings that have a memento mori painted on the back, and it was usually a skull in a crypt, in a crypt, in sort of like in a niche. There was an architectural component, and there was a skull inside of a niche. So we always confuse memento mori and vanitas as being the same thing, and there are a lot of similarities, but put in a timeline, there's a chronological distinction between memento moris and also vanitas. And these are themes that have appeared or flourished throughout art history up to today. So people are still doing vanitas and memento moris. And so we wanted to kind of like do something like that. So the idea would be for this collection to gather a series of objects in your immediate surrounding that are tied to this idea of futility of or fragility of life, and also the idea of time passing. Some of the motifs used for vanitas, just to give you an idea of what could be an inspiration for the objects on this still life that we're gonna put together. Obviously skulls, but that seems pretty macabre and gruesome if you ask us. We're gonna give you examples of vanitas that have no skulls, just to give you an idea. But skulls was kind of like the most immediate reminder of the certainty of death. Rotten fruit or fruit that was blemished, that was also a symbol of the good times, just kind of like behind us or something like that. This is really interesting. We're going to bring a photograph. Actually, let me just bring it right now. By the way, this image right here, it is a painting titled Still Life with a Skull and a Writing Quill, 1628, that's 1700s, 17th century, by Peter Klatz. And this is at the Met Museum. So this painting is kind of like a very famous reference for vanitas. But there is a painting. This is also within the same theme, because one of the motifs in a vanitas is a soap bubble. So bubbles, the brevity, symbolize the brevity of life and suddenness of death. So this painting in particular, let me kind of like read. It's titled Soap Bubbles, probably 1733, and this was painted by Jean-Simeon Chardin. I don't know if it's the same Chardin that did the still lives, the still life of strawberries that was sold recently, maybe a month ago, for a lot of money, and people started talking about his work. Maybe it is. I think it is. It's the same Chardin. So in this composition by 18th century French painter Jean-Simeon Chardin, we see two boys absorbed in the activity of blowing a soap bubble. During this time, the bubbles served as both the entertaining pastime and as a symbol for the ephemeral nature of life. The theme of the vanitas is touched on here, implying that the boy is lazy and is wasting his time. So, as you can see, throughout history, the motifs for the vanitas have kind of like evolved and changed, but we wanted to bring an example of a soap bubble being also part of this conglomerate of objects that symbolize this futility of life. So going back to more objects, smoke, watches and hourglasses, the brevity of life, counting time, including something that represented a countdown almost. So musical instruments, people included musical instruments in the paintings on the still lifes, on the grouping of objects, because they symbolize the brevity and the ephemeral nature of life also. I don't know how, but I'm going to show you a painting of VANITAS that's pretty spooky. I don't know. Oh, the skull is behind the video, but this is a self-portrait of a painter. Unfortunately, the image is cropped, but it's a painter, and there's a painting palette at the bottom of this image. And there's a painting rag, and there's a paintbrush. So this was VANITAS painted in 1872. This is quite late, considering the VANITAS started in the 17th century. This is almost like the 19th century. I'm sorry, close to the 20th century. Anyhow, self-portrait with Death Playing the Fiddle by Arnold Böcklin, 1872. And you could see that on the self-portrait of the painter, well, you cannot see this, but there is a skull behind. The skull seems to be smiling, and on the three fingers that you see below the video, the skull is holding a violin or a fiddle, I'm sorry, and the violin or the fiddle, it's kind of like cropped, so it's playing music. So this idea of like bringing a musical instrument inside the VANITAS to kind of like represent the ephemerity, whatever that word's pronounced, of all pleasures of life. They're not eternal, they're not lasting. There's always a moment where they end, and that's it. So yeah, that was part of that group of elements. The peel, this is very interesting. A peeled lemon. There were, I don't think we have any images, but they were included in the VANITAS, in this still life that represented the passing of life and the ephemerity of all things. There was usually a lemon that was peeled, and you could see the peeled kind of like unfolding or unraveling. So this was attractive to look at, but bitter to the taste. That's what it says in the article. Art historians debate how much and how seriously the VANITAS theme is implied in still life paintings without explicit imagery such as a skull. So there were paintings, and I'm going to show you one in particular. There were paintings that were considered, some people consider them VANITAS as well. And we could debate that this is a VANITAS or not. This painting by Dutch post-impressionist artist Vincent van Gogh depicts sunflowers at the height of their beauty, cut off from the stems and placed in a vase. We experience their last burst of vitality as they begin to wilt in various stages of decomposition, as captured in this painting. So maybe there's not a skull or an instrument, or maybe there wasn't like a very explicit idea of painting flowers as the symbol of the ephemerity of life. But there is certainly something that we could, why not? We could kind of like extricate from a painting that depicts cut flowers in different stages of life, like this little tiny flower going down that we don't know if, I think it's kind of like wilting. So a wilted flower could be also part of this group of objects. So the idea again is to do a VANITAS, a contemporary VANITAS, What could we use instead of a clock? We could use a cell phone. We could use I don't have one, but the Apple Watch. We can use an Apple Watch. We could use something that counts time. That could be part of that Vanitas contemporary approach or contemporary approach to Vanitas. A ripe fruit, cut flower. If we have wilted flowers, this is the perfect still life to do. We're still kind of like experiencing the last burst of blooming flowers right now, but we're certainly ending the period of time in which most of the flowers bloom. So perhaps on a walk or on a pot, or if you have a backyard, you may have like a different stage of a flower that would be perfect to symbolize this sort of like death, I guess. But yeah, it doesn't have to have a skull. And I'm just going to give you another example of a Vanitas, a little bit more contemporary, that does have a skull. It's a Georgia O'Keeffe cow skull with calico roses. This was painted in 1931, and American artist Georgia O'Keeffe became fascinated by the skeletons of cows dotting the landscape of the Southwest, the disastrous result of a drought causing the starvation and death of the animals. The skull is adorned with the kind of artificial flowers that were laid on graves in New Mexico. So we love learning how works of art could be open to several interpretive approaches. So the idea of Georgia O'Keeffe doing something that brings in a naturalist approach, what she observed in her surroundings, with the symbolism of sort of like the flowers that were offered when someone crossed to the other side, and bringing it all together. Bringing it all together on a painting. It's another example of a beautiful representation of a vanitas, something that expresses an ending, expresses the end of a high, the fact that all good things come to an end, and that nothing is permanent. And again, going back, if you're still watching this, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, we focused on a period in human history, the 17th century, specifically in Europe and specifically in the Netherlands, which at the time there were a confluence of people who owned a lot of material stuff, and just a few people, and when everyone else was like essentially starving, and the succession of several military conflicts and political conflicts, and how the artist at the time reacted to this confluence of extreme wealth, extreme poverty, and at the same time constant military conflicts, political upheaval, by creating a new genre, or resuscitating, no pun intended, a new genre of painting coming from the memento mori. The paintings were moody and dark and depressing because they wanted to symbolize this sort of like a mood that all these kind of like circumstances caused on the psyche, the collective psyche. So what else? Yeah, I'm gonna read from another article from Artsy, an article talking about Vanitas. They talk about memento mori before Vanitas, and also all as these paintings proliferated throughout the 17th century, artists used a great variety of objects to express the principles of Vanitas. Skulls, snuffed candles. Yes, I forgot, snuffed candles. So candles that were not lit, essentially, kind of like they were not trying to represent the permanence of life or the resilience of light, but the opposite, snuffed candles and burnt out lamps were some of the most obvious symbols of mortality. A clay pipe trailing wisps of smoke vanishing into the ether was another potent allusion to the fleeting nature of human life. Hourglasses, open pocket watches, and clocks suggested the passing of time and subtly reprimanded those who waste the precious resource. So there was this passive aggressive intention behind creating something that looked beautiful. And it was the idea of, things are going to end. And if you don't take advantage, maybe that's the positive side of this series. We don't want it to be so gloomy and dark, but we feel gloomy and dark because we have a string of really scary news 24/7 without end, and they seem to pile up. So there's this sense of having like a claustrophobic sensation that almost makes you feel paralyzed and not wanting to do something that like creating or going to nature and doing something beautiful and enjoying life. So we wanted to kind of like acknowledge that. I have 1 minute left. Acknowledge that and also talk about this very classic approach to still life. It could be one object, it could be two, it could be a cell phone and a candle, it could be a piece of fruit that it's rotting in your refrigerator. I have a couple. And then a flower in your backyard or on a walk that it's sort of like wilting. Don't make it too rich and too crowded. Symbolism is more important than quantity. So it could be one or two objects. It could be a book also. There were a lot of references to books in VANITAS. So a book that transformed your life, or a book that you really like, or you're currently reading, or you just ended, combined with your cell phone or a clock, a snuffed candle, and a flower. We're gonna paint it from life, or also we could just take a photograph and use it as a reference for our work. Join us. Link is in our calendar. Please consider joining the painting webinar tomorrow, Friday. We're going to carry on with this theme throughout the next couple of weeks. And we're excited that we're moving on from still lives, from plein air into kind of like more quiet still lives with sort of like a more somber mood. So thanks for joining us. And also catch us on Clubhouse right now. We're just going to end this recording and then we are just going to have a conversation about the book that we're reading. And we hope you join us as well. So thanks, everyone.